In the final months before his death, something about Bruce Lee reportedly started worrying the people around him. But almost nobody noticed it publicly at the time, because on camera, Bruce Lee still looked unstoppable, fast, focused, almost superhuman. That's the image most people remember today. But years later, when fans started rewatching interviews and behind-the-scenes footage from 1973, some people noticed something unsettling. Bruce Lee didn't always look healthy anymore. He looked exhausted, restless, like someone pushing himself far beyond normal limits. And honestly, that changes the emotional feeling of his final year completely. Because everybody talks about Bruce Lee's death. Almost nobody talks about what his life may have started feeling like before it happened. By 1973, Bruce Lee wasn't only making movies. He was carrying global pressure, Hollywood expectations, physical exhaustion, financial stress, and the weight of becoming a cultural symbol almost overnight. And depending on who you ask, that pressure either made Bruce Lee stronger or slowly started destroying him privately. Bruce Lee spent years trying to become famous, but almost nobody talks about how quickly his life reportedly became unrecognizable once fame finally arrived. Because between 1971 and 1973, everything exploded. Movies became massive hits. Fans surrounded him constantly. Studios suddenly wanted him. Money increased. Pressure increased faster. And maybe that's the first thing people misunderstand about Bruce Lee. They imagine confidence automatically means emotional stability. Those are not always the same thing. Because according to several people close to him, Bruce Lee became increasingly intense during those years. More obsessive, more perfectionistic, sleeping less, training constantly. And honestly, some people admired that level of discipline. Others think it may have become psychologically unhealthy. That debate still exists today, especially because Bruce Lee didn't really know how to slow down anymore. And maybe he felt like he couldn't. Because after spending years being underestimated, Bruce Lee finally had the attention he wanted. But attention comes with pressure most people never see publicly. By early 1973, some people around Bruce Lee reportedly started noticing changes in him. But almost nobody fully understood what those changes meant at the time. Because publicly, everything still looked successful. Enter the Dragon was happening. Hollywood was finally taking him seriously. The world saw momentum, not exhaustion. But behind the scenes, Bruce Lee reportedly looked thinner, more drained, more emotionally intense. And years later, that's the part many fans say feels disturbing in hindsight. Because once you know what eventually happens, certain interviews start feeling different emotionally. Not dramatic, just strange. Like Bruce Lee was carrying something invisible. Some people think fans romanticize this too much now. Others believe the warning signs were obvious. That argument still divides people online decades later. But one thing is difficult to ignore. Bruce Lee was pushing himself unbelievably hard in 1973. Physically, mentally, emotionally, almost nonstop. Bruce Lee reportedly understood Enter the Dragon could change Hollywood forever. But almost nobody talks about what that realization may have done to him psychologically. Because this wasn't just another movie anymore. This was pressure on a global level. If the film failed, many people believe Hollywood executives would use that failure as proof that Asian male leads couldn't carry international films. Bruce Lee reportedly knew that, and according to people around the production, he became obsessed with details during filming, repeating scenes, correcting choreography, arguing over camera work, pushing everyone harder, pushing himself hardest. Some people saw genius. Others saw someone slowly burning himself out. And honestly, both things can exist at the same time. Because when audiences rewatch footage from those final months now, Bruce Lee doesn't really look relaxed anymore. He looks driven, intense, almost wired constantly. And maybe that's why his final year feels emotionally different today than it did back then. Because modern audiences are more aware of what extreme pressure can do to people psychologically, especially celebrities. By 1973, Bruce Lee no longer felt like a normal celebrity. And honestly, That may have become part of the problem. Because once the world turns you into a symbol, people stop seeing your exhaustion clearly. Bruce Lee represented discipline, masculinity, strength, control, confidence, especially to young men globally, especially to Asian audiences who rarely saw that kind of power represented in Hollywood before. And maybe that's why people still react emotionally when discussing Bruce Lee today. Because for many fans, he became larger than entertainment itself. But psychologically, living as a symbol can become dangerous. Because symbols are expected to stay strong constantly. Humans can't. And maybe Bruce Lee felt trapped inside that pressure by 1973. Some people think that idea is exaggerated. Others believe fame isolated him more than audiences realized. That debate still hasn't disappeared. Bruce Lee died on July 20th, 1973. But almost nobody agrees emotionally on what his final months actually meant. That's why the story still feels so haunting now. Some people believe Bruce Lee was simply overworked. Others think the pressure around him became psychologically destructive. And of course, there are still endless conspiracy theories decades later. But maybe the saddest explanation is also the simplest one. That Bruce Lee kept pushing himself beyond human limits for too long, while the entire world watched him becoming larger than life publicly. Because the strangest thing about Bruce Lee's final year is how successful it looked from the outside. Most people saw victory. Very few people noticed exhaustion. And maybe that's exactly why the story still feels disturbing now. Everybody remembers Bruce Lee as unstoppable. But years later, many fans started realizing something uncomfortable. By the time Bruce Lee finally conquered Hollywood, he may have already been running on exhaustion for much longer than the public ever understood. And depending on who you ask, that pressure either created the legend or slowly destroyed the man behind it.